Hello everyone and welcome to the first Opinion Poll Tracker video of 2025 here on the Gavin Partridge YouTube channel. So we're going to be looking at the latest prediction from Electoral Calculus from last month based on December's opinion polls for the next UK general election. We will go through those opinion polls and see how things are looking. And I shall get on that for you in a second. Just say that if you're enjoying the blogs on the channel, please like, share and subscribe. And thank you so much everyone for doing that. Of course, we're a long way away from the general election. We only had an election back in the summer. And if things go well for the government, the election will probably be in 2028. After a 4-year run, things go badly for the government. I'm not sure we're going terribly well at the moment. Then the Parliament will probably run its full 5-year course and last until 2029. So we are many updates away from the general election. But nevertheless, it's always interesting to chart on a month-by-month basis how opinion is changing and, track those changes as we get ever closer to the election. So that's what we're going to be doing for you right now. So with all that said and done, we're going to get ourselves over to Electoral Calculus and have a look. So in 5, in 4, in 3, in 2, in 1, here we go. And that is the current prediction from Electoral Calculus. They are saying that the next election, Labour short of an overall majority, so it's a hung parliament, Labour short of an overall majority by 16 seats. That is virtually unchanged on December's prediction based on November's opinion polls, where Labour were 15 seats short of an overall majority. So very little change from November to December. But let's go through the numbers. So we've got our party columns just here, 2024 votes and seats, just bear remember predicted columns just here. So Conservatives are on a central seat prediction for the next election now of 176 seats. That's well up on the 121 they got in 2024, despite their vote share being virtually unchanged in 2024. General election, he got 24.4% of the vote, but now on a predicted share of the vote of 24.5%, so very much unchanged. But despite that, their overall central seat prediction is quite significantly up, although 176 is still very low for the Conservatives. Remember, in election 2024, they had their worst result in terms of both share of the vote and also seats in their entire 200-year history. There is a margin of error, of course, in that seat prediction. So at the high end, they could be as high as 285. At the low end, they could be as low as 70. The reason Conservatives are up with their seat prediction, despite their share of the vote being unchanged, is what's happening to Labour. So Labour are now on a central seat prediction of 310. And that is with a central prediction for their share of the vote of 26.7%. That is about 8% down on what they got back in the summer when they achieved 34.7% of the vote with 412 seats. So they've lost about 8% since July of their share of the vote, and that's the reason we see the Conservatives up there to 176. So for Labour's range, they're on a central prediction of 310, which is 16 short of the 326 they need to get overall majority of 1 seat. The range of error sees them possibly as high as 378 seats and could be as low as 128 seats. So big range there. Big margin for error. Liberal Democrats are on a central seat prediction of 71 seats. Could be as high as 86. Could be as low as 41. Their vote share down a little bit on what they got in election 24, but not greatly. Reform are the big movers here. Well, Labour down and Reform up. So what's happening with Reform is quite interesting. At the last election, they got 14.7% of the vote and 5 seats. They are now on virtually 22% of the vote, 21.9% there. Though it looks like that 8% that's come off Labour's gone directly to Reform. It's not quite that simple and straightforward, but a little bit more has gone from the Conservatives to Reform, I think, some definitely of the of Labour share has gone to Reform. A little bit of it has gone to the Greens as well. So there's a bit of churn going on, but overall, we see Labour significantly down, Reform significantly up. So about 21.9% of the vote share gives them a central seat prediction of just 36 seats. That's first past the post, again, acting against the Labour Party. There is a big margin of error within that, though. At the high end, they could be as high as 221. At the low end, they could be on 23, which is still significantly above the 5 seats that they got at the last election. The Greens are on 8.5% of the predicted share of the vote. That's a bit up on what they got in 2024 at 6.9%, gives them a central seat prediction of 4 seats, which is unchanged on what they got in election 2024. In the margin of error, they could be as high as 18, could be as low as 3. SNP on a central seat prediction of 20 seats, it could be as high as 41, as low as 8. And Plaid on a central seat prediction of 4 seats, could be as high as 7, could be as low as 2. Others on 11 seats. And then we come down to the Northern Irish parties down here. Labour overall short of a majority by 16 seats. They would still be able to govern with that. Conservatives, even at their highest end of the range, 285, are still underneath the 310. But Labour would have there. And, of course, they could do a deal with the Liberal Democrats, etc., etc., etc. 310, they probably could govern, as a minority, actually, for a while anyway. So Labour will be able to continue in power, being 16 seats short of an overall majority. Remember, Sinn Féin, the 7 Sinn Féin MPs don't take their seats either, so that makes it a little bit less than Labour, but Labour need to continue in government. But nevertheless, it's a significant loss of seats and vote share compared to what they got at the last election. So clearly Labour are in a little bit of trouble here so early on in the Parliament. Well, these are the opinion polls that that prediction is based upon. That were released during December. So the first poll was more in common, just here, which gave the Conservatives a 2% lead. So we do see a few polls where the Conservatives are leading in them now. So we saw Conservatives on 28%, Labour on 26%, Reform were on 21%, Liberal Democrats on 13%, and Greens on 7%, others on 6%, overall, an overall Conservative lead of 2%. Then we're able to find out now poll that again gave Conservatives a 2% lead, 26% share of votes to Conservatives, 23% to Labour, which is pretty atrocious considering they only won a general election with a landslide like 6 months ago. Reform on 24%, Liberal Democrats on 11%, Greens on 9%, others on 6%. Technically, then gave Labour a 2% lead. And then we had Stonehaven, which was an MRP poll, remember those? The dreaded MRPs are back. And they gave Labour a 4% lead. So 28% Labour, 24% Conservatives, 21% Reform, 13% Liberal Democrats, and 8% for the Greens. MRP polls, I'm not really sure why we're seeing MRP polls. There's another one just here from More in Common. That gave Conservatives a 1% lead, I should say, 26% for Conservatives, 25% for Labour, 21% for Reform. I'm not sure why we're seeing MRP polls at the moment, to be honest. They are more, something that we will see more often closer to a general election. So, I'm not sure why we've got those MRP polls turning up. But anyway, they're in the mix. We have the first Survation poll of this Parliament. That was conducted between the 12th and the 16th of December. They had a little bit of a higher Labour lead, actually. They found Labour on 4%, on 5%, I should say. 30% share for Labour, 25% for Conservatives, 20% for Reform, 11% for the Liberal Democrats, and 7% for the Greens. After that, we had a technical poll that appeared, giving Labour a 1% lead. The biggest Labour lead of December came from Opinium, I think, just here, just before Christmas. And they gave Labour... So sorry, everyone. They gave Labour a 6% lead, with Labour on 29%, Conservatives on 23%, Reform on 22%, Liberal Democrats on 11%, and Greens were on 10%. Others were on 7%. That's the biggest Labour lead of December. And then the final poll of December was this one, DeltaPoll, which gave Labour a 4% lead, 29% Labour, 25% Conservatives, 21% Reform, 12% Liberal Democrats, and 8% Greens, 5% for the others there. So maybe there was a slight improvement in the Labour position later in December compared to earlier on in the month. But it's difficult to say because we hadn't had a Survation poll before. So if we had been having Survation polls, maybe they would have been showing Labour on a 5% lead. No, we still haven't had a YouGov poll in terms of voting intention anyway in this Parliament, which is rather surprising. They're one of the biggest pollsters. We haven't had an IPSOS Moring poll either. We haven't had a Redfield Wilton poll in this Parliament so far either. So a lot of the big players are still out of the game right now, but I'm sure they will start releasing voting intention polls before too much longer. There's been 3 polls conducted in 2025 so far, and we'll have a look at those in next month's video, of course, but they're quite interesting as well. So there was a DeltaPoll that showed up at the start of of January, which gave Labour a 7% lead, quite a decent poll for Labour, about 30% Labour, 23% Conservatives. But then 2 much more worrying polls, I think, for Labour from More in Common and then Find Out Now. Though the More in Common poll had the Conservatives and Labour tied on 26% and Reform were on 22%. And then the Find Out Now poll really did cause a few ructions. That only came out the other day, and it has Labour and Reform tied. So Labour on 25%, Reform on 25%, Conservatives down just 20%, 11% for Liberal Democrats, and 11% the Greens there. So, but if that was an election result, that would cause all sorts of havoc. I think Reform and Labour being tied, and Conservatives on 20%. Anyway, we'll talk more about January's opinion polls next month. The next month's tracker video. But this is how the overall polling graph is looking now. So Labour's decline is beginning to level off. Labour starts just here, of course, and is now down to there with their trend line. So we did see a significant weakening of Labour's position through the opening months of this Parliament. That is beginning to stabilise, at least for the time being. Conservatives, after lifting up through the early phase of the Parliament, are now beginning to drop again, actually. So the Conservative trend line is starting to drop down, and the big beneficiary seems to be Reform. Reform start just here and are now just there, and it doesn't look as though we're all that far away from a Conservative Reform crossover. So that might be something to look out for in the next month or two, Conservatives crossing over with Reform in terms of the second place party. Liberal Democrats are beginning to lower, and that is something that happens to them in a Parliament. They'll probably be relatively flat, throughout this Parliament, except if they get a little bit of traction with by-election wins and whatnot. They tend to go up in general elections when they get more media, more media scrutiny, I suppose, which for them is a good thing. And then they tend to drop through the Parliament when there's less focus on them. Interestingly, that the Greens are also lifting up. So we see like Greens and Reform as the two beneficiaries so far. Conservatives and to some degree Liberal Democrats dropping dropping, and Labour, well, obviously they did see a very large drop early on in the Parliament, which looks like it's stabilising for the time being. How long that stabilises for remains to be seen, but at the moment it looks like their trend line is stabilising a little bit. Right, okay, let's just go back to Central Bleacher. So there it is, Labour, 16 seats of an overall majority in hung Parliament territory. We shall see where we go from here in next month's tracker video. If you enjoyed this tracker video, then please you like, share and subscribe. Make sure to do that, and we'll have another update for you next month in February. For this one, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.